So to me, a key referral partner implies the ability to generate a high quantity of quality introductions to ideal clients. That's a key referral source. A key referral partner is one that we can share back and forth. So by absolute definition, those people are people selling to the people that you're selling to, but they're not selling what you're selling.
Welcome to the Making Sales Social podcast, featuring the top voices in sales, marketing, and business. Join Bryn Tillman and me, Bob Woods, as we each bring you the best tips and strategies our guests are teaching their clients, so you can leverage them for your own virtual and social selling. This episode of the Making Sales Social podcast is brought to you by Social Sales Link, the company that helps you start more trust-based conversations without being salesy through the power of LinkedIn and AI. Start your journey for free by joining our resource library at socialsaleslink.com/library. Welcome to the show. My guest today is Daniel Andrews of Networking in Action International, as well as many of his own endeavors. Daniel is a native and resident of Columbia, South Carolina. I've driven through there often, actually. He shows business people how to identify, find, meet, and nurture professional relationships with key referral partners. Fundamentally, he shows business people how to stop just networking and instead start building true networks. This is his fourth career, and I've been there, done that kind of thing myself. He's been successfully self-employed for 36 years, and that number actually goes up to 50 if you start with that lemonade stand that he had in first grade. With that, welcome to Making Sales Social, Daniel Andrews.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Bob. Thanks for the invitation.
Sure, glad to have you here. So our first traditional question always is, what does making sales social mean to you?
The way I think it ought to be applied is to be authentic. I think this may come up as we kind of expand on some concepts, but I see too often people using a cocktail party style of networking and relationship building, and finding out who belongs in your social circle is a completely separate concept from finding out who belongs in your professional circle. So I think if you're going to make it social or relational, that relates to being intentional and authentic. But you can't just do business with people that you're friendly with.
Okay, right? So what is that cocktail style, I guess? I mean,
sure. Well, and I can illuminate a little bit, and I think you're going to. I'll tie this in now because it makes a good point, which is the title on my LinkedIn profile, if you go to look at it, if anybody cares, is Chief Instigator. And I use that title because it means I'm willing to tell you what works, even if you don't think it's what works, because I have data to back up that it's working. I have people all the time like, well, I'm doing X, or I have a system and it's not getting the results. What am I doing wrong? And I go, using the system. And they go, no. They're like, no, I just got to do it better. I'm like, no, you asked what you're doing wrong. That system has already got a built-in limit. And one of those is the notion that, well, let's start with this phrase. It's a phrase you've heard 1,000 times. You've said it 100 times. Most of your audience has heard it 1,000 times. Most of your audience has said it 100 times. And it's this phrase. People do business with folks they know, like, and trust. What's the most important word in that sentence? Wrong. The most important word in that sentence is business. I don't care what you were going to say, you are going to get it wrong. The most important word in that sentence is business. Here's a better way to think of it. Are there people that have been to your house for game night? You've been with them down to the bowling alley. They've joined you for the football tailgate, but you wouldn't actually hire them to do what you do.
Oh, yeah.
Are there people that you've hired or would endorse, recommend, or refer, but you just don't picture them at your house for game night, over the tailgate, or down at the bowling alley?
Again, oh yeah.
So if your model is finding out if Bob Woods is likable, that's great if you need extra guests at the tailgate. But if you're trying to find out is Bob Woods referable and does he belong in my professional network, you've got to ask a totally different set of questions. I'm not saying you can't ask about the fam and how's life and, you look a little sunburned, did you go on vacation, whatever the case may be. But those don't move the professional conversation forward. They don't do anything to find out if this person belongs in my professional circle. So social selling to me means prioritizing authenticity and relationship, but not mistaking social connection with business connection.
Okay. That sounds good. So I'm still amazed at the 4 careers thing. So why don't you quickly walk us through what you've done so far? And I'm especially interested in how you got from being involved with Big Lemonade to doing what you're doing now.
Sure. And I'll give you guys the shortest bio. A podcaster recently, he's like, I need a 3 or 4, paragraph bio. And I'm like, nobody cares for the show notes. I'm like, I can't remember the last time I read the show notes on a podcast. Right. But anyway, so I said, I don't even like my biography. Why do other people care? So we'll do the 4 careers and we'll jump back to lemonade stand. So I took a summer job in 1988 with Cutco Cutlery. So that's an independent contractor. So I was self-employed, had a corporate brand name behind me, right? A very systematized process, been around since 1949, 1901, if you count the wherever cookware in the cycle. But Cutco Cutlery is a direct sales product, very well established. They got a great system for showing college kids how to sell. Ended up keeping the job for 15 years because it pays better than most people think a job selling knives will pay. And that's where these swords came from as awards, from that past history. And then after that, I moved from my hometown, Columbia, South Carolina, where I live now. That's where I'm pointing down, even though I moved away. I was here then, moved away and switched to B2B, which is where I really started to learn what a network meant, right? We had worked on referrals at a very low level inside Cutco, but B2B in a city where you don't know anybody and therefore trust levels have to be higher really took on a whole new meaning. And that's where the wheel started to turn, that I only thought I knew and understand referrals and networks. And so that was a big shift for me there. And I learned it by grinding it out, meaning doing it wrong, doing it right, taking notes in both cases, mentors, reading, studying. So I made a jump to B2B, but because I did not understand referrals and networks, I should say, and because I was in a city where I didn't know anybody, it failed. And I closed my employee benefits brokerage and went to work with a company selling direct mail to car dealerships. And that's about as boring as you think it would be. Even if you're in the industry, it's still pretty boring. But the one thing, if you take your car to the dealership for an oil change, the one thing they know for sure, Bob, sooner or later, you're going to need an oil change. So there's a whole direct mail process behind windshield wipers and paint jobs and oil changes and batteries and eventually a new car. But I built my network and I built my understanding of networks. And when I left that position, because some turnover they had made at corporate office, I went back to my employee benefits brokerage and it launched it successfully. So that was career number 2 and 1, 2, 2.5, 2, right? Back to number 2, right? So I went to 3 and then back to number 2. Did it quite well. Moved to Houston, Texas, encountered network in action. And my first wife had said for years, if you could ever figure out a way to make a living on all the handshakes you generated between other people, right? I said, yeah, the only model I know of is a finder's fee model, and it's problematic for a whole bunch of reasons. It's not a good approach to life and business. I said, I'm not going to engage in that. But yeah, I wish there was a model. As a client of Network in Action in Houston, Texas, I'm like, oh. And when I went to move back home, Dad was in his 80s with cancer. Mom and stepdad both starting to get ill too. I came back home 8 years ago, and I said to the founder, I said, I hate that you guys don't have Network in Action in South Carolina yet, because they were only in Texas at the time. And he said, well, we can fix that. So career number 4 became the model that I'd always wondered if it existed, how to make a living, creating introductions for people and bringing the right folks into it. So the last 8 years, I really put a lot of focus on that. Now, to make sure people don't understand that it wasn't a jump from age 6 to age 20, lemonade stand to Cutco, it was a very direct line. From there, I went to selling greeting cards door to door in the neighborhood. Then I went to selling programs at University of South Carolina football games on the weekends for 8 years, 5th grade through 12th grade, to selling M&Ms to my classmates. Once I got a driver's license, I could go down to the wholesale candy company downtown, which the building is still there. It's no longer a wholesale candy company, but it's still there, downtown Columbia, and you can see the faded paint. It's Palmetto Candy and Cigar. And right, so it was always about the sale. And I think part of the reason I'm drawn to a sales environment is because my father was a fighter pilot, and the kindest compliment one man can pay to another from a fighter pilot's perspective is, you don't suck that bad. And I loved a sales environment. I mean, he aged well, and before he passed, he gave me a lot of grace, and we healed a lot of things. So I just want to make sure you guys know I died on good terms with Dad. My father died on good terms with me. But I was craving a sales environment because you know where you stand. They publish the standings daily or weekly. You know what it takes to get the job done. Nobody promises you one paycheck and gives you another. Nobody tells you that you could have done better. If this is what you did, this is what you got. Right. And I've always been drawn to that. The idea that I get to determine where the goalposts are and nobody's going to move them. So that's why I've ended up in the sales environment.
Yeah. Interesting. So with that great title of Chief Business Instigator, I mean, that's something you normally don't see in a business org chart.
But
how
you
do
should.
How do you define that? And especially, how does that define what you do?
I love leading with that. I'm always leery of self-appointed titles, particularly thing that makes people sound grand, right? You know, I remember in a Zoom call I was in, and the guy actually, next to his name, he had added the words Master Connector. Turns out he wasn't, by the way, but so it's always interesting when people give, well, and I'll make a reference here in a minute. But anyway, you know, I went with Chief Instigator because it's not meant to build me up, right? It's just a fact. And that's this. If your system isn't working, I will tell you, you don't need to figure out how to work the system better. You need a different system, right? And that's why I feel comfortable with Chief Instigator. I start with the phrase, people in business don't need more connections, they need better connections. Everybody agrees with that. And from there on, I start to get very controversial, i.e. people tend to divide. The first is for people to know, right? One of the things that I say with confidence of data, by the way, these are not opinions. I try not to have opinions as little as possible. I have positions based on data. You don't need more people in your network, you need fewer. You can spend less time, not more, and get exponentially better results. So I can prove that mathematically and through experience, right? Another is finder's fees don't work. Don't pay people 10% of the deal to bring you deals. That's a losing proposition across the board. It's a losing proposition in all but 0.001% of the cases. So don't do it. Another is, you know, that idea of, you know, people do business, folks they know, like, and trust, right? Or one of my favorites, you know, somebody said, you know, they messaged me, they reached out on LinkedIn, made a connection. I said, yeah, what are you trying to accomplish, right? Kind of opening the door. Well, I'm out here building my network, right? I'm like, no, you're building your connections, right? Well, people, you know, do business, folks they know, like, and trust. I said, well, you can't build know, like, and trust through social media. You can build familiarity. That's it. That's all you can build is familiarity, because there's plenty of clowns in politics and government and business masquerading as nice people, right? And they're not. Right. So that's it. Right. So here's the other one. I just need to find the right people. I need to find the right community. It is easier to become the right person than it is to find the right people. And when I say become the right person, I don't mean character-wise. I assume I'm dealing with people with character. It's easier to develop the right skill set than it is to find the right people. Because if you have the right skill set, you will acknowledge that everybody you ever need to reach for the rest of your career is accessible to you today. Now you don't have time on the calendar to call all of them today, but everyone that you need to reach to be successful for your whole career is already inside you're probably at third degree. So your network, which really is by definition your network, meaning your network doesn't have a network. Your network is your network and their network. Right. Your network is second and third and fourth degree.
That's a good way to put it. I like that. I've never heard it put quite like that before. It's a really good way to put it. And I believe that this is where your key referral partners things comes in. So ta-da. So identifying, finding, meeting, and especially nurturing those relationships. So let's just dive headfirst into how that works. And I think you pretty much defined key referral partners already, but if you could put like a really specific short definition of that first and then get into how to, that would be good.
Yeah, sure. And I think it's worthy of a significant definition, because this is a really critical component. There are plenty of people that know what I do. That does not make me referable on them. There are plenty of people that know me well enough to refer me. I am referable on them. I have credibility with them, right? But the vast majority of those people don't come in contact with very many people that need me.
Mhm.
So to me, a key referral partner implies the ability to generate a high quantity of quality introductions to ideal clients.
Mhm.
That's a key referral source. A key referral partner is one that we can share back and forth. So by absolute definition, those people are people selling to the people that you're selling to, but they're not selling what you're selling. Parallel salespeople, as it were. I'll give you some very specific examples. A real estate agent and a mortgage lender may never buy a thing from the other, but the mortgage lender's prospects and customers need to be introduced to the real estate agent. Real estate agent's prospects and customers need to be introduced to the mortgage lender. At a slightly higher level, meaning one requires a little more thought, but just as valuable, a moving company and a divorce attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Not all the moving companies' customers need a divorce attorney. Not all the divorce companies' customers need a moving company. But there's a higher percentage of people that are moving going through a divorce than men or women on the street, right? Meaning if I was a divorce attorney in my neighborhood, I wouldn't knock on every door. I would knock on the doors of the ones that have moving vans in front, right? I'd save the time and only knock on 3, not 300. John Gates, one of my clients, is a salary negotiation coach. Amanda Valbear, one of my trusted friends and business partners, is a resume writing coach.
Yep.
They are both perfectly suited, meaning whatever John does to enlarge his database of prospects and customers, referral partners with Amanda, referral partners with other people, whatever marketing or word of mouth or whatever he works by, is going to increase his number of prospects. That gives him more people to do business with and more people to share with Amanda. And Amanda's going to do the same, meaning you find a point of overlap. My customers are highly likely to be your customers. Your customers are highly likely to be my customers. So that's a referral partnership. As I grow my database of customers from sources, as John grows his database of customers and prospects separate from Amanda, that creates introductions he can make for Amanda. As Amanda finds prospects and customers separate from being referred by John, that creates more people she can refer to John. That's a key referral partnership. So if people have 6 to 10 of those, which is not a big number, I don't care what industry you're in, 6 to 10, mm-hmm. and you have a consistent cycle of meeting with them once a month on the average, and on the average, every time you do, I have a lead for Bob, Bob have a lead for me, right? Meaning there's no such thing as too often if we're finding mutual value. Somebody said, how often you go back to the same well? I said, how often do you ask your husband for a hug? Right? If you're mutually supported, you'd be like, I don't know, it'd feel really weird. If I said to my wife, I don't know, I don't want to demand too much from you. I think I could get by with one hug a week. You okay with that? She'd be like, what? No. The experience of a hug, hand holding, going on a date, it's a mutually beneficial experience. So if I have people in my world that are key referral partners and I'm supporting them with the right introductions, they're supporting me once a month, not a big number, one referral on average per month, not a big number, but you have 6 to 10 of those, that's 72 to 120 warm endorsements.
Yeah.
To ideal candidates, not your target market, but your target market, your ideal candidate. Now, it takes a couple months usually for your key referral partners to move from a very generalized sense of who your customers are to target to ideal.
Right.
Even though you told them the first time, you got kids, you got employees, yeah. You have to tell them more than once, right? So, right. So it takes a few months for that to evolve. But once you've got those 6 to 10 people in place, you're only getting ideal candidates, clients, ideal prospects, and you're only getting them onto your calendar through a warm introduction or an endorsement, meaning they show up on your calendar with the propensity to believe you because they believe in the person that referred you.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, especially because speaking of these meetings and things like that, I've been involved in, probably not the level of what you're talking about, but like networking groups and lead sharing groups and things like that. I'm wondering if you could just tell me really quickly your thoughts on like both of those types of groups. And I don't know if you'd say one would be better for a business person than another, or I don't know what. You know what I'm saying, though?
Sure. Well, the first thing I want to say is let's assume ethics, right? Good hearts, clean hearts, right? Okay, so we're assuming ethics, but if it works, it's good. If it doesn't, it's bad, right? Now, the problem with a leads group mentality, and I call them leads groups. They call themselves networking groups.
Right.
They're not. They're leads groups. But the part of the challenge you run into there is it's very roster based, meaning you're expected to refer simply because they're on the roster. And if you're not on the roster, you're no longer refer, meaning you're trapped in a cycle. It's a treadmill you can't get off if you become dependent on those leads, right? If you're not actually building any real relationships. People say all the time, oh, I got relationships with people in my leads group. I know, I can prove it. They may go golfing with you if you quit, but if you quit the group, they're not allowed to give you business anymore. That means you don't have a professional. You might still have a golfing buddy, might still have a best man for your wedding, but you're not going to get leads from them. So you have familiarity, right? But if you're expected to refer regardless of the quality of the work that's being done, if you're based on a quota, so people are throwing names into a hat rather than not have a name because they get in trouble for not having a name to throw into the offering basket, you're getting low quality, right? I'm not interested in one a month. I'm interested in people that know me well enough to give me one ideal client a month. And if you don't have one this month, I'd rather skip it than have you give me low quality, right? Because you think you own it, right? So anything that's predicated on quotas, anything that's predicated on the roster are fundamentally transactional and they get in the way. Now you can make it up on volume, right? But you're not building a relationship and you're not building, right? I mean, yeah, you're not building a relationship and it's very transactional, right? And it's very frustrating. And they believe bigger is better, right? Because they're trying to make it up on quantity. When again, you only need 6 to 10 people in your world. You really only need 6 to 10, right? Okay, so a networking group might have a better vibe and energy to it. They want to do well, but they stop at trust building. Awareness is one thing. Most people go to an open networking group and all they accomplish is awareness. Here's my card, Bob. This is what I do. This is who I want you to refer me to. I don't know you. I'm not going to refer you. They may get to trust. You can't get to trust in a group. They may meet with you once or twice after that, build trust, and then they sit back and wait for the phone to ring. So they've gone from awareness to trust, which most people never make that jump. But almost everybody I've ever met, with the exception of maybe 3 people in my life, stop at trust and wait for the phone to ring. They do not have a system where they're back in a Zoom call every 20, 30, 45, 60 days going, all right, Bob, this is our monthly call where I open up my Rolodex and you open up yours. Who you got for me this one? Who you got for me this one? Right? And again, people go, well, I don't want to ask that often. But don't you have something to offer? Is that a key referral partner or a key referral source? If it's a key referral partner, they're anxious to meet with you because there's mutual value. Yeah. Right? A key referral source, you can wear them out. But a key referral partner is never worn out by your presence because you're supporting them like they're supporting you. So, and people don't bother to get into a cycle. Now, I think you normally have to do that between 8 and 12 months before the other person's got the hang of it and you're finished coaching each other on the difference between target and ideal. But you get the rhythm going. And at that point, I tell you, there's plenty of people that put themselves on my calendar for 15 minutes. They don't show. They just know that's my 15 minutes to focus on them for the month, right? All right. So right, you know, they put in the right after they book my 15-minute slot. It says anything I need to know, and they go, I won't be there. I'm just counting on you for referrals again this month. I'm like, okay, because I can do the same with them, or they've already done it for me, right? And they know that that's the best way to make sure I've got the time one. Right. So you can reach a point where you don't have to meet. But if you think about it, if you've got 10 people and you meet for a half-hour Zoom on the high end, once a month, that's 5 hours a month. That's no events. That's no open networking. That's no leads groups. That's no networking groups. That's no chamber of commerce. That's nothing. It's 10 Zooms a month, 5 hours top, 120 warm introductions to qualified candidates. That's more than most people's business can stand.
Yeah. Yeah, I would that.
So you need to be you spend less time with fewer people, build the right relationship. The more is in the authenticity. The more is in what you're able to give and receive.
Okay. All right, great. So in your experience, so now we're talking going from that high mark probably to a low mark. So what are the most common mistakes business pros make in networking and how can they avoid them? Especially, I mean, we're not talking about events necessarily here, but I mean, we are all going out to events more too. So I
Sure.
guess that in that key in that in that
Okay, sure. The mistake amateurs make, people new to the world or that haven't matured to a certain point, the mistake they make is thinking that all the value is going to happen in the event. They don't know what next steps are. Some people don't even know that there are next steps.
Right.
But if they don't know that next steps exist or what they are, then you're forced to try to create all the value inside that moment at the event.
Right.
And you cannot create any value at an event in a group setting. I'll come back to that because people are arguing with me in their head. I'll tell you what you think you're thinking of, but it's not what I just said. At an event in a group setting, you cannot create value. You can lose value. You can say something stupid or sexist or racist, and you can lose cred. You can maintain cred, right? Mike Johnson, good friend of mine, business connection friend. He's leaving as I'm coming in, right? Neither one of us has time to stop, but Mike goes, and I go, but if he said, and I turn my head, I've lost cred. So I can lose, I can maintain. You cannot build cred in a group setting. So they stop and they try to force all the value into that moment when there's no value to be had. And that forces them into one of two modes. They're very similar, but they're first cousins. Some people think they're the same thing. In my mind, they're first cousins. Speed prospecting. You're going to buy my thing, Bob? Yes, no, maybe. Can I have your card? You're going to buy my thing, Susie Q? Yes, no, maybe. Can I have your card? You going to buy my thing, Suzanne? Yes, no, maybe. Can I have your card? Speed prospecting. They'd have been better off going into the parking lot and slide a business card under every windshield wiper. Save the time, save the calories, save the money, go home. Or it's close cousin, marketing by hand. Here's my card, Bob. Call me if you need me. Better yet, here's 2 cards. If you ever think of somebody that needs me, have them call me. Right? I don't know you well enough to refer you.
Right.
I don't distrust you. I don't trust you. I don't distrust you. I just don't have any trust built. We're starting at 0. You've got no cred built with me. I don't know if I would. Right? I don't know enough to know if you're the sort of person to refer. Now, every now and then you say, no, that's not true. Me and David had a great conversation at the networking event. I said, no, you had a great conversation adjacent to the networking event.
Yep. You
were at the event, but you literally or figuratively stepped aside and got into a brief one-to-one.
Yeah.
But in a group, you cannot gain cred. You can only select who you're going to build with. Then you have to have a model. So amateurs try to cram it all into the event when there's none to be had in the event. They don't do any next steps, so they don't ever see the value, which is why they keep trying to cram more and more of it into the front end, right? Find the right people, find the right group instead of being the right person. And again, I don't mean character, having the right tools to build the right relationships. What experts do, people that are better at it, but they still drop off, is they take the extra steps to build the trust and the credibility or the referability, if you want to think of it that way. They build the trust and the referability. And then they stop without a system in place. They just hope that someone else is thinking about them, right? David Allen wrote a great book called Getting Things Done. And it's all about getting things done. And in the book, he makes a really solid point. And I'm sorry, my phone is dinging. Hopefully it's not picking up on your microphone. He makes a really solid point. People don't like to think it's unnatural. They do it as little as possible. Lest you think I'm a cynic, ponder for a moment your experience on the roadways of your own hometown. And now you agree with me. People don't like to think it's unnatural. They do as little as possible. And what I mean by that, again, not cynicism, right? But Bob, I convince you I'm referable, and then you go about your business. Well, you've got a lot of things on your mind. But let's talk about the time that you have to spend thinking about business. Whose business do you think about?
Mine.
I'm kidding myself if I think that you're going to put much effort at all, if any, because 83 people will ask you to think about their business too. That's why you get on people's calendars, and you don't get on the calendar, meaning I don't finish one meeting without booking the next one if there's another one to be had. If the values trickle out, we leave it alone, right? Or somebody will put themselves on my calendar, or put myself on somebody else's calendar. And the act of putting them on the calendar, both consciously and subconsciously, brings me to the top of their mind. That forces me to think about their business and them to think about mine. When I bought a green Prius, all I could see was green Priuses. Had nothing to do with the number of green Priuses on the road. It had to do with the fact that a green Prius has my attention, and therefore I see other. So when I put myself on their calendar, they put themselves on my calendar. Both of us are elevated to both consciously and subconsciously thinking, who does Bob need? So when the meeting rolls around, I've got value for them. And people stop. They wait for the phone to ring. And I'm like, that's because you believe that giving referrals is a one-way street, and you don't believe that you're truly in service to the other person.
Yep. Could not agree more with that. Yeah.
So they stop at trust and never take it a step further. I've known very successful business people whose high watermark was 2 referrals from one client. And I'm like, there are about 300 or 400 leads that you've never gotten because you never asked people, and it's not even your clients. There are people better situated in Kevin's world to give him referrals than his own clients. Not that his clients shouldn't or couldn't, or they don't believe in him.
Right.
But they're just people that are better situated than his clients to refer more clients. And he's never bothered to figure out who those people are and to spend time with them.
So now let's talk quickly about someone who has successfully done that. So, and I'm sure you have lots of success stories, but can you share one where, where someone has done this effectively and what they've gotten out of it? And obviously you can't get into too many specifics, but try to.
I'll just quote the testimonials on my website so I can be as clear as we want to be, right? So, Mandy, I can't remember which one. She's divorced, so I can't remember which one's her main name. I think she's Mandy Mills now, right? So it was Mandy Anderson. It's Mandy Mills. Mandy Mills, right there on my website, says one introduction from Dan created $250,000 in net worth, not gross, not net worth. It's a pretty nice number. Suzanne Taylor King says in her first 90 days of working with me on how to do this better, and this is a successful business person that's run $1 million companies before. She said, tripled my revenue, in her coaching business inside the first, 90 days. Strictly through referrals, right? Katrina Goslin did a whole case study for me, both a video and a printed, case study on, how much more money she's earned because, she's adopted the skills that we teach and coach here. All of these things, right, exist out there. A great example, and I will leave his last name off. Not that we're not close, but I haven't asked permission to use this.
Sure, that makes sense.
As a matter of fact, I'll even leave his first name off because you figure out who it is by going through my LinkedIn profile. But he's a headhunter. And I was introduced to him via LinkedIn messaging, sent him a LinkedIn. Okay. Yeah, he's a headhunter. Sent him a LinkedIn message. Right. We were in a thread. He said, let's connect individually. I did. Got an autoresponder. He had his autoresponder on, which is not a problem because he engaged immediately behind that. Right. I'll tell you what the autoresponder said in just a second. And I have screen caps of this. If anybody believes this isn't true, I have screen caps. And he says to me, a headhunter, executive recruiter, right? Placement specialist. Do you know how those people get paid, Bob?
When someone gets hired.
Right, to place people in jobs, and they get paid when, right? Sometimes there's a lag in 30, 60 days, but they have to put someone in the job. His autoresponder says, due to the number of messages I received, here, let me read it clearly, because I use this to make a point. So I'll just read it directly, right, from the screen caps. And if anybody believes you can alter screen caps, I'll do screen share and scroll back in my thread with this guy. Due to the volume of messages I receive, my responses are prioritized by 1, connections and connection referrals, meaning people he knows and people referred by people he knows. 2, job seekers responding specifically to jobs I'm working on. He's got a 3, 4, and 5, but who cares what 3, 4, and 5 are? They have to do with this community. He puts his network ahead of his paycheck because one candidate trying to fill one job that he's been paying to fill is one payday. But his network is a lifetime's worth of paydays. Yeah.
I like that.
If you've got 6 to 10 people, the people that I get introduced to, they're described as the most networked around or fully networked. I have to be walked into their office. And in that half sentence, there's 2 key concepts. I have to be walked in. You cannot cold call your way onto the other side of their desk. You've got to be walked in to their office. They are not out because they're done. They've got their 6 to 10. They've got more business than they can take a stick at. They take care of their referral partners 1, their customers 2, and it all comes together in the end. And this is what's amazing. And extroverts go, you're saying this, no, if you like going to the cocktail parties, go, man, I ain't going to stop you. But take the pressure off yourself because that's not where the value is, right? Introverts love this. They go, What? I'm like, don't tell the extroverts. It's easier for an introvert to get this because you don't have to convince them. They need fewer people and less time. They're like, oh, thank God, right? They're excited, right? I said the introverts have the edge because they're already geared towards fewer people, less time, deeper relationship. And that's what you need. So you got to convince the extroverts to ease up for a minute.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Talking about VA yesterday. I said, what do we do with all these business cards? It seems a shame. She goes, I don't know. Throw them out. I'm like, throw them out. She goes, you've messaged these people 4 times over 2 years. Anybody that's never replied to you in 4 attempts over 2 years, probably never want to hear from you. I said, they don't dislike you. They don't see any value. And I said, she's like, throw them away and let her get away from your, don't let the stack of business cards convince you that there's value there. You've already tested these people and there's no mutual value. So toss them. Don't let it bear down on you.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that.
And she's right.
Yeah.
Plus, she knows if I keep them, I'm going to give her a project. He's like, I've emailed them 4 times already. We're not doing this anymore. Yes,
yeah, it's not happening. Catch the glue. So I'm sure after this, there's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to want to get in contact with you more. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, find out more about exactly how you can help them with this process, how would they do that?
Sure. 2 ways. I like throwing my phone number out there, 803-361-6825. I believe phones numbers are very personal. You can text or call, 803-361-6825. If you do text or call, tell me your name. Tell me Bob Wood's podcast, right? So I'll remember where it came from, right? And then would love to talk. And then my website for people that are worried about time zone differentials. I'm on the East Coast, and I do stop answering the phone at a certain point. You can go to my website. On my website, you can find my LinkedIn profile. On there, you can find, if you dig hard enough to get on my calendar for 15 minutes, I don't make it easy to find. Not because I don't want to talk to you guys, but seriously, text me. I'm not going to sell you anything over the phone. Right. You can't be high pressure into buying something over a phone call because you just hang up, right? I don't know how to pressure people. I don't do that. I'll talk to you about what I do. We'll see if my philosophy resonates with yours. If it does, we'll schedule a time to talk. Low stakes, no cost. If it's going to be some serious value, I do have various price points for time with me. But the website is DanielPatrickAndrews.com. Do not search for Daniel Patrick Andrews. You cannot find me. There's a very infamous individual, a politician in Australia, who dominates the search results. Don't Google DanielPatrickAndrews.com. Go to DanielPatrickAndrews.com.
Yeah, and both of that site address and the phone number will be in show notes. So just in case you missed that, just pop on over to the show notes and they'll be right there too. So
803-361-6825 for those that didn't get their pen out until just now.
Call now. I shouldn't say operator.
Operator standby, but wait, there's more.
Free shipping and handling, 2 for 1. Daniel Andrews.
You're killing me, Smalls.
Chief Business Instigator and Partnering Guru. Thank you so much for joining us today on Making Sales Social.
This has been a blast. Thank you, man.
I'm so happy to hear that. And thank you for streaming this episode of Making Sales Social. So remember, when you're out and about this week and any week, be sure to make your sales social.
Awesome. Thanks.
Don't miss an episode. Visit socialsaleslink.com/podcast. Leave a review down below. Tell us what you think, what you learned, and what you want to hear from us next. Register for free resources at linkedinlibrary.com. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Play. Visit our website, socialsaleslink.com, for more information.